Hey everybody, I'm Christian, that's Corey, and we are here to review the Berserk Movie 3, Descent. Well, right off, I have to say that I am so happy that they are making these movies. Every time we start one of these reviews, I get happy that we get to talk about Berserk again. And maybe at the end of the day, it is not new Berserk, but it is a retelling, and the budget is gigantic, and the movies are beautiful and bloody, and they tell a story in a way that only our imaginations could when we were reading the manga. And I'm really glad that we're getting to talk about this again, so let's get into it.
So we actually open up with some old material in the movie. We get to see that Griffith is still going through sort of that weird phase where he's running after the kingdom. They have that metaphorical state where he's a kid, he's running towards the castle, and this immediately leads into the Band of the Hawk. We finally get to go see them again, and obviously they've seen better days. They've been screwed over by the Midland Army. They've been screwed over by Griffith. Guts is no longer there. And they've actually been attacked by the Kushins. And if you don't know who they are, maybe you will if you read the manga series. They included this great scene where Casca and a bunch of the Band of the Hawk members are fighting against these Kushin assassins. And there's this one main guy who I believe is actually a character who's in the manga series, but they don't say his name in the movie. But he uses these weapons. They're these swords that are connected. And it looks like they're like these whip blades. And what happens if you get connected up into them, it'll essentially just slice you up and everything. It's really, really brutal, and it's animated really, really well. As well as just the normal fight choreography here. It's actually one of the better fight scenes in the whole movie, to be honest.
The whole movie is animated well.
And then Guts just shows up out of nowhere. He's badass, and he just causes all of them to run away. And this is where we get kind of the huge reunion with all the members of the Band of the Hawk. And Griffith eventually... And Guts eventually learns that Griffith has been captured and tortured, and pretty much they don't know what to do.
So now that the battle is over, we get to the Guts and Casca scene by the waterfall. And this is a really important scene to the series. As we all know, this is when Guts and Casca decide to go from bickering, always fighting generals in this army, to lovers. And this scene is very dramatic, and I love the way they animated it. I mean, Berserk is a kind of series, especially being so fantasy-oriented, it would never work in a live-action thing. It would just... And I love Game of Thrones, and I see so many parallels, especially now that they have dragons and things like that on a regular on that show. But, this scene is... I just, love the background work. The idea of this waterfall and this tree and everything. And something that they're doing a lot in anime is, the way shadows play off characters' faces. It really makes them look like they're in a 3D world.
Let's get the elephant out of the room. This was a steamy sex scene.
At the end of this rainbow, there's no pot of gold. Just two people fucking.
Everything.
Casca penetrated Guts, and then Guts penetrated Casca.
There's symbolism there somewhere, people. It's a scene that doesn't make you feel dirty, even though there's something dirty going on. You actually do feel the connection between the characters, and that alone is effective. And for God's sakes, if there's anything this Berserk trilogy needed, it was some heterosexual sex scenes. So the big middle portion of this film is we get to see the Band of Hawk has finally come back together, and they devise this plan to sort of rescue Griffith from the clutches of the Midland Army. And this whole scene is really, really creepy because we finally get to get our first view of Griffith after all of the torturing that he has had to endure. And even when compared to the original anime series and even the manga, it's disturbing when you see him for the first time. His wrists have been cut. His heels have been cut, his Achilles tendons and everything. He essentially just cannot walk anymore.
It's like he's a puppet guy or something.
That's exactly what he is.
Yeah.
And he's still wearing his Band of Hawk mask and everything. And they actually take that off of him for a second, but you never really get a good look at his face. I can imagine it's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, they probably cut his nose off and ripped his skin off or something.
They definitely implied that they ripped portions of his skin off and tortured him, and they even cut his tongue out, and you get to figure out who that tongue went to.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts of this scene is actually the killing of the torture artist or the dungeon keeper, whatever you want to call that guy. And I remember in the original anime, the guy was sort of creepy, but full-size human being. But in this, it's almost like some weird imp person or a little
It's more
monster.
Closely related to the manga version.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's something I didn't remember. But when I saw this movie, I thought that little sort of evil-looking guy really fit the persona of what I thought that torture artist would have been. And the way Guts kills him is just so intense because he's on his little step stool, and all of a sudden the sword comes through the door and just holds him up over that large crevice, and then he just falls down. But before he does it, Guts cuts his tongue out too for kind of revenge because he had Griffith's tongue around his. Anyway, it was just.
It's really fucked up because he doesn't just casually do it. Guts is you said, he stabs through the door, and then he's just has his knife in his mouth, and he's just you fucker. And it's just this is, by the way, this is the most violent Berserk movie. Like, especially towards the end. It's intense.
Yeah, it's definitely way more violent. And something I always complained about with the last two movies was there wasn't much supernatural stuff. And this movie obviously made up for it, especially because of the eclipse at the end. But this, to me, is what Berserk feels like. In my opinion, this has the right atmosphere.
And speaking of supernatural, I can't believe we actually didn't even bring it up.
We haven't.
Right after the sex scene with Guts and Casca, we get to see that they're resting, and then all of a sudden the scene gets really, really ominous, and all this fog starts to make its way into the forest. And this, oh my god, I can't believe it. It's so great to finally see it. We finally get to see Skull Knight in the anime, and he looks awesome. He's drawn really ominously. His horse looks great. He's got the glowing red eyes and everything. And his voice sounds really, really great. And this is his first appearance to basically give Guts a warning. You're pretty much fucked. Be prepared. You're about to walk through the darkness. And then he slowly makes his way, and you don't see him again until the end of the film. But boy, does he make an impression in this movie. And we'll get to that stuff later.
So one of the other things is the scenes that they cut. And one of them, which I always thought was really made a huge impact on me, was when they were escaping with Griffith, the Midland Army actually got Griffith back and like removed the sheet and showed the Band of Hawk how crippled he was now. And in this scene, or in this Berserk movie 3, they don't do that scene. What they do is they have kind of like a conference on this big grassy hill, which is very symbolic for the Band of Hawk, because that's where Griffith and Guts first met, and where they had their first battle is on these like grassy hills. And they have like a little conference, and they say, you know, this is how bad Griffith is. And it's a lot more personal this way, and it's sort of kept with the theme of the movie a little more. And, you know, as much as I really liked Guts killing that guy in the original anime series, I thought this was a much more appropriate way to do it. And then we all know what happens. Griffith runs away. He has a vision of his kingdom and him as a younger person, and he ends up running towards this like supernatural light, and it ends up starting the eclipse. And as we all know, the eclipse is where shit really goes down, and the series gets I don't know if you call it a U-turn or a random whatever. The series
it's what changes the series like as a whole, and kind of like changes the entire dynamic of it.
It'd be like if Goku turned Super Saiyan and everyone got raped.
Yeah, except that
it's like,
so after that huge scene with Griffith essentially trying to kill himself multiple times and even laughing about it, that's when we finally go into this Eclipse scene, which if you've seen the original anime, you've read the manga, you know how disturbing all of this is. The imagery is just intense and grotesque. And I think the CG of these movies
there
has
are
really...
faces on the faces.
There are. That's an interesting thing. When they go in there, if you remember, they always showed those like giant like faces, like hills made of faces. In this one, they go to extreme detail by showing they're all made out of even smaller, creepier faces that are constantly moaning, and the horses are freaking out when they've been transported to this place. I mean, everybody's like, what the hell's going on? And this is the scene that benefits the most from all of the CG, because everything's constantly moving, everything's always reacting, and then when all the demons start to finally make their way in, that's when the animation just goes boom! When the God Hand finally starts to show up, they all have a really huge entrance that's awesome. I think Void had the coolest intro. He's the one that has the giant brain, the Mars Attacks looking guy.
Yeah, the Mars Attacks guy.
And but also, I like the one, you know, when he comes down from the ceiling.
And then he's huge.
And he's really huge, and then he explodes into a smaller form. Like, he's the troll member of the God Hand and everything. And then you got that one succubus lady who's, of course, pretty racy. But still, this whole scene is just a mind fuck. It's insane. And it's all the lead up to the point where the God Hand are offering Griffith the chance to sacrifice all of his comrades in order to become essentially a dark angel. And when everybody finally starts to get the brand and everything, it's animated well. I love the explosion of energy it all attracts to each person. And then when they all start to transform into the demons, it's just nightmare fuel. Just the way they contort, the way they move. They have tentacles all over their bodies that are constantly wriggling around. And then they just fucking start eating people left and right, picking them up, biting their heads off, ripping their arms off, ripping them in half. Blood everywhere. Just a mass orgy of violence. And damned if it doesn't leave an impression. It's horrifying. It's awful because there's really nothing nobody can do. You have Casca who's running away. You have Casca who's running away with Judo, and he gets attacked by this giant, like, freaky Silent Hill monster that's like, and then it fucking like stabs him through, and it's fucked up and it's depressing. Fucking Pippin, who's a badass, gets killed. Corcus, I don't feel so bad about him dying, but maybe that's just because he's always been sort of a cockbag. But he definitely gets what is coming to him when he runs up on that naked lady who turns into the demon. And they actually showed him getting like his head bitten off in this version.
They don't hold back.
Yeah, they don't hold back at all. Like, even in the manga, they didn't show his like whole head getting bitten off. So that was pretty cool. But the coolest thing about all this is that Guts is somehow still alive and like fighting against hundreds and hundreds of demons, literally ripping their own appendages off and using them as weapons against them.
So now that all the Band of Hawk is pretty much sacrificed and they're all dead, essentially, like Guts has gone around and seen everyone dead in this big puddle of blood after he fell fighting all the demons, he gets out and Griffith emerges. And as soon as he lands, Guts starts walking towards him, and he just immediately has Casca lowered down next to him. And which is one of the most demoralizing / shocking scenes that I think I've ever experienced in anime, and also storytelling in a whole. You see the scene of Griffith raping Casca and making Guts watch. And it's just as gruesome as ever. If anything, it's better because they, like we said, the budget is so big on this series. They can just show everything. There is no need for like the last one, which was just colored images with sounds behind them and panning. Like there's no need to do that.
It's not really pleasant at all.
No, it's very uncomfortable.
You know, the entire time, you know, the demons are forcing Guts to watch this. Mm-hmm. One of them bites down on his arm. Yeah, when the scene that where Guts loses his arm is extra gruesome this time. And yeah, it's just the sound effects are perfect and gross. And the atmosphere is so different than, juxtaposed to the other sex scene, which was more, passionate. And this one is just, it is so violent. You really do feel the pain that Guts is experiencing during the scene. I think I like what you said, the pain that he's experiencing. The scene at the end where his arm is ripped off and he starts to run towards Griffith. And they added in that scene where he's about to like stab Griffith in the head, but he stops him right there. And you get to see that even Griffith is kind of freaked out that Guts is able to like resist all this. And like you said, this wasn't in the original manga or the anime series. And I'm guessing they included this in just to show that even though there's all these demons and powerful characters, that Guts is, even though he's just human, he can still like resist it with his raw strength. And he's missing a freaking arm right now. So that's pretty hardcore. But Griffith is able to push him back, and then they hold him down even longer. And that's when Griffith finishes things off. And this is where that scene comes in where Guts just starts screaming. And in the original anime series, this is where it ends. That's all you get.
Hands into the screen.
But right now, it's just they slowly fade away to the darkness. He's continually screaming, and then they immediately pan up into the sky, and you get to see above the giant hand is this red moon that just explodes. And fucking Skull Knight comes out again.
Da-da-da.
Holy fuck. After fighting against Zod, by the way, which is pretty freaking awesome. Why are they fighting? They don't really get into it, but you know what? It's awesome looking. So, fucking Skull Knight comes in. He's literally running down this giant arm. He tries to attack Void, one of the members of the God Hands, with his sword. But Void has the ability to create these, like, freaky teleportation circles where he hits that, the sword goes through that, and he tries to hit Skull Knight with it, but then he blocks it with his shield. It's fucking awesome. And then he goes through and he starts to take out a bunch of demons at once. And even Griffith tries to take out the Skull Knight, but Skull Knight's too much for him. He's able to escape, and he escapes with both Guts and Casca. And it looks like the God Hand are not going to have all of their sacrifices after all.
So now comes the parts that were not in the original anime, which is huge, because if you remember the original anime, you had Guts watching Casca get raped, and it panned in on him screaming, fade to black, credits. And you were like, what the fuck was that? Like, I've watched all these episodes to get that ending, and that's why these movies are so important, because they go beyond that. And now we see like Guts emerge in this room that's like has a waterfall dripping down in the corner, and he's trying to take in what's happening. He sees that his arm is gone. He runs up to Casca and he sees that she's like mentally retarded, or in a sense like her ability to understand reality has changed, and she's like a child now. It's like it's
like extreme PTS.
Yeah, it's like it really messed her up. And then he runs off into the woods, and he just runs as fast as he can. He's pulling off his bandages. You see his new lack of an eye on one side, and it's like bleeding. And he runs out to his field. It becomes nighttime, and then these demons start to attack as his brand starts to bleed. And then the Skull Knight comes to him and is like, this is your new reality. This is what you will experience every night. All these demons and all the negative spirits from the underworld will come towards you, trying to kill you because you are the eternal sacrifice. And then Guts ends up grabbing the Skull Knight's sword, which was totally badass. And as the Skull Knight watches on, he fights demons all night till the morning. And then in one of the coolest closers I've seen in a movie in a long time, it slowly pans away with Guts and the Skull Knight standing there watching the dawn come in the most eerie / hopeful ending I've seen in a long time, and the grass blades are like as the camera's pulling away.
It's a really effective scene because it shows that it's the big. I love it because there's like multiple symbolism here.
Yeah,
the sun is rising, a new day has begun, a new beginning. But at the same time, it slowly creeps back into the darkness. It's just, like I said, it's horrifying and it's uplifting at the same time. And just, I literally got chills thinking about that scene again.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what it is. It's and this is coming after seeing all this crazy eclipse bullshit. My favorite scene in the movie is that final pan-out shot of just Skull Knight and Guts standing on the hill. It's just... It gives me such amazing goosebumps. I cannot wait to see the fourth movie. And speaking of fourth movies, make sure when you guys watch this to stick around after the credits. There is this post-credit scene where
you see
Guts
Batman is going to be with Justice League.
It's going to be crazy. And then they're going to meet the fucking Avengers.
Okay. So
fight Godzilla with Pacific Rim. Is suiting up. He is putting on his brand new black armor, his knives. He even has a replacement for his arm, which is no longer there. And if you guys are familiar with the manga, you know exactly what that is. And he also gets his brand new sword, which is so hilariously big and so awesome. And then you get to see him walking out into the snow, the brand new Guts, the Black Swordsman. And as the screen fades to black, we get in bold red letters, in English, mind you, this is only the beginning.
So we can only hope for more movies. Corey's excited.
I'm really excited. Oh my god. Did we like this movie? Yeah, I think we did. I think of the Berserk trilogy films, I think it's definitely the best. Easily. Makes the best use of its 3D animation. Mm-hmm. Makes the best use of its running time, which is fucking 2 hours long when compared to the minuscule hour and a half ones that came before it. All the action was great. The Kushin thing at the beginning was awesome. The Eclipse was brutal as hell. The little teaser for the new movies, just in Skull fucking Knight bumps us up to at least a 9 already. So, final score from me out of 10. It wasn't perfect. There were some things they could have changed. Some music maybe I would have wanted to change around. But for the most part, as a film, it's catching the most important parts of the Golden Age trilogy, especially the ending. And I'm glad they're finally giving us that stuff after the Eclipse and leading it into a sequel, which better freaking happen.
In a timely fashion too.
I'm not saying, just get it, make it happen. Fuck.
Definitely by next year we need another movie.
Yeah,
I think
really
that's
do.
Fair. That's fair.
Next holiday season, make it happen.
Okay, Corey, what was your score? You never said
9 out of 10.
I have to completely agree. Actually, you know what? I say 10 out of 10. I fucking love this movie.
Bold.
I would watch it again any day, and I thought it was good. I wouldn't show it to anyone.
I wouldn't show. Now, I like what you said. I would watch it any day. I wouldn't show it to family members and certain people who are squeamish. This is an intense film. It's not for everybody. It's going to affect you on an emotional level, on a spiritual level, and it's going to fuck with your mind a little bit. But
what you should do is hand this out to the people who are jonesing because Game of Thrones is not on right now.
Yeah,
hand that out.
Seriously, if you're a fan of Game of Thrones, you'll totally dig Berserk.
Yeah,
and vice versa.
Yeah. Okay, you guys, that was our review. This was a long one. This might actually be one of our longest reviews ever.
But we had to talk about it.
There was a lot. 2-hour movie, you guys. There's a lot to cover in this. And it's being compared to a manga and an original anime series. So there's a lot to, look through and compare. So definitely make sure to give our review a big thumbs up if you enjoy it. We really work hard on these. And stay tuned for some of our other videos coming up.
All right, now that we've finished reviewing all of these movies, and by the way, we will review the Blu-ray releases when the second Berserk movie comes out and the third movie. And the second movie should be coming out, actually, I believe, this fall, so stay tuned for that. So now that we've finally reviewed these, though, Christian, what do you want to see from the new movies, if they do make them, specifically?
I want to see the next arc broken up into another 3 movies. If they can keep doing that in 3-movie chunks, because some of those arcs are long. Like, some of those arcs are really long, and if they try to shove all that into one movie, even if it's 2 hours, it won't work, in my opinion. So I want to see another 3-movie arcs coming up. And I want to get to the Berserker armor as quickly as possible, but at the same time not rush it, so maybe I'm asking for too much.
I completely agree. This was the Golden Age trilogy. I think it's time they did the Dark Ages trilogy. And I think they could totally end the third movie with Guts getting his Berserk armor for the first time. And that would be great. I'm not going to tell you guys about any of the other plot points because I think you guys just need to go out and read the Berserk manga yourselves.
Which is still superior.
Mm-hmm.
So until next time, you guys, Super Comic Guru 9000 out.